Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that is what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Sherry Boodram. Sherry is the CEO of CannDelta Incorporated. Sherry has always loved science and discovering why life works. She has taken that passion and applied it into the cannabis industry. I learned from Sherry the behind the scenes of cannabis and the importance of not only the regulations that are required to get into that industry, but also how they provide the tools to run and operate a commercial and retail company in the cannabis space, something I knew nothing about. Sherry has learned reliability, dependability, and determination from her parents, and it truly shows in how she gets to better the pond in the cannabis industry, as well as helping women entrepreneurs. She left me with the thought of where you are is where you're meant to be. I was very grateful to be where I was with Sherry today. Thank you, Sherry, for everything that you do to better the pond. All right, Sherry Boodram, the CEO of CannDelta Incorporated, out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and you also have a office in Hackensack, New York. Is that correct?
Yes, and also in the financial area in Manhattan as well.
Perfect. Well, Sherry, I met you through Tech Canada, as you're a member, and of course the esteemed Lindsay McMurray, your chair. And because you were so amazing, you had so much to offer the group, you were so inspiring that you won the James Pond Award. So therefore, here you are as a guest on the Better the Pond podcast. Sherry Boodram, it is absolutely fantastic to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, first of all, before we get into the questions, Sherry, can you sort of tell myself and my listeners about CannDelta? What is it that you do?
Yeah, great. So CannDelta is an established leading global consultancy in the cannabis sector. We've guided over 350 businesses through the licensing process of obtaining a license to conduct activities with cannabis, as well as through complex cannabis regulations and marketing strategies. So we do help with compliance, although the majority of our business really is around licensing, getting companies licensed so they can have a successful cannabis business. So we've been operating for almost 7 years now. We've really been able to build a reputation for providing our clients with a network that's rich really in regulatory knowledge and tailored compliance solutions. So we like to think of ourselves really as small business consultants, because oftentimes, people come to us and they know that they want to get into the industry. They know they might want to start a certain type of cannabis business, like a cannabis retail store, for example, but they don't really know how to get from that ideation to an actual, physical operating business. So we've been doing this for quite a while. As I've been saying, we've helped many, many businesses through the process. So we can really see all the pieces that fit together. And we have a really great network of, partners and others that we also work with to help provide our clients with, recommendations on things like vendors and, really how to get them through to the end so that they can have a compliant business that is successful. So our team is largely made up of individuals with scientific backgrounds. I myself, I'm a chemist. The other co-founder is also a chemist as well. We have PhDs in chemistry. And a lot of our consultants are also scientists by training. We also, Lucas and myself, the other co-founder, we've also come from government. We've worked in government, so we know how government regulatory authorities think and how they interpret regulations and translate that into practice, which is really important in working in a regulated industry and operationalizing your business based on regulations.
Very interesting. Actually, the cannabis business, I have to be perfectly honest, I know really nothing about. I have no idea how it operates in the background. I mean, we're seeing, there's been quite an explosion of retail stores. I'm from Regina, and all of a sudden, there's one, there's two, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're on every street corner. So how many people are in your space who basically do the service that you provide, but basically of an organization trying to find, regulatory control and getting into the industry.
Yeah, I mean, like any other business, we do have competitors that are similar to us, that offer similar services. I would say the difference with us is that, again, we've worked in government. We know how government thinks. I know how they like to see the applications. My background specifically, I worked in the cannabis program in Canada. So I was a compliance officer. I did the licensing and the on-site inspections of facilities once they were licensed, and even before their pre licensing inspections as well. So I know how that should look. I know what they're looking for. I know what it means to be compliant, what the documentation should look like, what their application should look like. And it's, I would say, a fairly unique experience because, when you're working in the government, you don't really leave the government. It is quite comfortable, I would say. So I'm one of the rare individuals who did leave the public sector and joined the private industry and started a company. So, I think that experience is very unique. Some of our competitors are also lawyers, I would say specifically in the US. I would say there are a lot of law firms that are the ones offering the licensing support and preparing the applications. The difference with us is that, again, we have that experience of seeing a facility and knowing the quality aspect that goes into it because of our actual, scientific background and training.
Mm-hmm.
We are typically more affordable than a lawyer. We don't, we could have set fees. Our fee structure is a little bit different than that. And we really look at the business comprehensively and provide small business consulting, right? So they can really operationalize. It's one thing to submit an application, but at the end of the day, like, you need to run an actual business. You need to know how you're going to, what your floor plans should actually look like, how you need to set up your security, what the building materials need to look like to ensure that you have an operation that can produce quality cannabis that prevents any contamination. You have a good process flow. So there's many other components to it than just the document writing. So there are definitely many areas that set us apart from our competitors.
So yeah, so just to be clear on that, and to my listeners too, CannDelta isn't just about getting a regulatory approval, but it's about that, but also of actually operating a business. So you said as the floor plans and structure and how to produce, and so it's actually how to operate a business,
yeah,
as well as actually getting into the industry.
Yeah, sure.
Nice. So what is the sort of time frame that would take from an initial process of getting, providing an application or engaging with you to getting to actually being a functional a company to be able to produce?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the jurisdiction. Also depends on the license type that you're applying for. Retail licenses tend to be licensed quicker. It's just a smaller space. The operations are not as complex as, say, cultivation or processing. So that process is usually quicker. It usually take, a matter of months for that, depending on the jurisdiction and your actual build out time. Whereas a cultivation processing can take anywhere for to a year. The regulatory landscape does play a factor in it because in some jurisdictions it's a lottery system. Sorry, so you can only get far. In the US. In Canada, it's not a lottery. You apply, Health Canada will review it. It's more a matter of how quickly you put together the application, how quickly you can build, and then they'll go through the approval process. Health Canada's gotten better or faster at approving. There's less applicants than there were some years ago. Plus, there's more familiarity on what they want to approve and what's common in the industry. So the review time is typically, let's say, around 6 months. Is pretty average. There's a security clearance process that goes into that where the individuals on the application, the key individuals, need to go through a security clearance process with the RCMP. So that can take time depending on if they travel a lot and if there's more to look into. But in the US, most states have a lottery system. So it's a little bit stepwise and you need some municipal approval. So it could take some time depending on the state and then also the municipality that you're looking to set up your business.
Yeah, so I was just down speaking in the US. is so state by state, obviously they have different rules and regulations. Is there many states that where cannabis is legal?
Yes, there are a lot of states that have a medical framework.
Okay.
Right now, what's happening is that a lot of those states are now transitioning to an adult use framework, so like recreational use,
Hmm.
where they'll establish retail stores, and they're setting up a separate framework for that. And in the past 2 years, there have been definitely an increase in the number of states that are now starting to build out that framework. So
Oh,
we expect just to see more of that. Whether or not there's going to be federal legalization is another question. There's some elections that are going to be happening, so we'll see if that influences things. But yeah,
that definitely, I mean, that directly, impacts your business, with a federal election, what they decide to do, right, affects you.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
In Canada, as far as from a regulatory standpoint, when it comes to the quality of cannabis and the regulations, is that a constant moving target? Has it improved over time? Where it's been is it a changing market? Are standards getting higher over time?
In Canada, I would say that so Canada's becoming a mature market now, where there's less licensing that's happening and more, I guess, people are just operationalizing and there's a compliance component to it, but the regulators are inspecting a lot of these facilities as much as it used to be. The industry itself has taken a large hit, just because of, cost of, from the excise taxes, and the margins are not great. So they're not making a lot of money. And that means that they have less money to spend on consultants, right? Like that's kind of a luxury.
Okay.
And they kind of rather, take the risk of maybe a non-compliance and seeing if the regulator, how strict they'll be on any enforcement action. And it's usually, the regulator, Health Canada is fairly good with trying to work with industry stakeholders and the license holders to bring them into compliance. So
Mhm.
they'll give opportunities to become compliant. So it's usually something like a warning letter, might
Mm.
be a recall, but it's not like they're getting fines or getting their license suspended immediately, right? That's kind of after continuous non-compliance. So they're in a position where they're more comfortable taking on the risk. Whereas in the earlier years, they're more risk adverse, but now it's kind of like, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what other people are doing. And then, kind of going that route. Um, but in the US, it's a little bit different because that landscape has been, you know, difficult in that it's new, and the regulators are now writing the regulations as the industry is being built.
Right.
And there are some changes that have happened that have affected our business. One of the changes was particularly in New York. New York has a large market, and it was supposed to be an open system, but then they decided to go to a lottery. So that changed the way that the contracts that we already had in place. That changed because we're expecting to have a certain payment cadence,
Right.
and then now that it's a lottery, it's like, okay, well, if not all of our clients are ever going to get to the end, we're never going to see that second half, right, of the
Right.
payment. So it's, that was very challenging for us because we were depending on a certain cash flow, and amount of work coming in.
Right.
Yeah, so from that lens, yes, it's difficult sometimes to predict what it's going to turn out to be.
Wow. Yeah, so as I said, I know nothing about this market, and it's so interesting to learn from you, sort of like how things work on the back end and how things can really, affect either your business or the cannabis business, and all depending on who writes policy.
Yeah,
So it's really the control's out of your hands.
yeah, the
Yeah.
control's a little bit out of your hands. Obviously, there are consultation periods sometimes, but they're not as influential sometimes, um, when it really comes down to the enactment. It's very early on, and at the end of the day, the regulators can make certain decisions
Hmm.
a little bit off script.
Yeah.
So
All right, so there we go. Now we know a little bit about CannDelta and what you do. So now, Sherry, I want to get into who you are. And so, of course, the first question is, what got you from being in Gosling? And I'm talking like, where were you born? Where did you start life? Right, at the very, very beginnings
Okay.
to when you left the nest. When did you go out on your own? When did you expand yourself? And you either said you were either pushed out or you left on your own. That was, we'll find out what that was. To where you are today and what got you into being, the CEO of CannDelta. So, Sherry Boodram, what is your backstory?
Yeah, so I'm from Toronto, born and raised. I guess now that you're saying that, I haven't really moved from here. But yeah, so born and raised in Toronto. I have, I guess my family comes from Trinidad. My parents came over to Canada when they just got married. They were very young, they were 19, 20 years old.
Wow.
Um, I have four other siblings. Um, I have three sisters and one brother, so there's five of us. We come from a big family. So I have always been interested in just wanting to know how things work. So, science has always been something that I've been interested in. I originally wanted to be a veterinarian, but realized that I didn't like all animals. I
Okay,
was
which
somewhat
ones
afraid
didn't
of
you like?
like reptiles. I'm not really a big reptile person, but I guess, I could just stay with, cats and dogs. Um, so, I kind of moved on to outside of considering other job opportunities, but, again, always kind of excelled and was interested in science. Went to university at U of T for, well, I was in general science, but then, eventually went into a specialist program in chemistry. So I did chemistry in my undergraduate degree in an honors program. And then when I graduated, worked for Health Canada as a drug forensic chemist. And at the time, Health Canada was only hiring students who had graduated from UT. So that was a really great stepping stone for me and really pivotal in my career because that really got me into government. And I was under the controlled substances program. I was a chemist and analyzed primarily cannabis that were confiscated by police for court cases. So we would do the analysis and then write the expert reports on that. So I did that for a year and then realized that, I wasn't completely satisfied with, where I left off academically and wanted to continue my academic career. So went to York University for a master's degree in chemistry. Did that for 2 years and was going, my plan was to just do that and go back and work because I actually really liked working in the controlled substances program. I just wanted to make sure that, I felt fulfilled in my academic career. And but when I was in grad school, my research was going really well. And my supervisor was like, you should just stay and do a PhD. So I was like, I'm gonna just stay and do a PhD. What the hell? What's another 5 more years? So I did my PhD at the same time. So I went to York University at the same time. I also did a college program in regulatory affairs and quality assurance. So Seneca has a campus that's on U of T's campus, has a school on U of T's, on York's campus. So I would run my reactions, set them up, run them at night, and then go and do that course. It was in person, so I go and do that course in the evenings as well. And I did that because when I worked at Health Canada, I knew a lot of people who did a regulatory affairs program, and I always thought that was something that was lacking in just like core science, core chemistry. It's like, how do you really work in a company, right? Because like, yeah, I'm working in a lab and I can do these experiments, but how do you really like work in a framework where you're like in a pharmaceutical company and you have to do drug submissions? And there's obviously an aspect of regulatory and quality assurance around that wasn't really taught in a chemistry program. So I thought that would be useful for when I do, go out and start looking for jobs to have that kind of, in parallel to what I was doing. So that was my thought behind that. So I did that and then finished my PhD and then went back to work for Health Canada. I was in the same lab, but I was in a higher role. So I was also analyzing hard drugs like, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, other things, other harder drugs that were confiscated by police. So we would run the analysis and also testify in court as the expert witness for those court cases. And that gave me a really good handle on the regulatory framework within controlled substances, and also, I guess, just the public speaking aspect of it and justifying the results. So I became really interested in policy, left that, and then worked for another company, well, another department within the federal government, doing environmental assessments for major resource projects in Northern Ontario. So I was a project manager that would oversee some of these major projects, like a gold mine in Northern Ontario. We would do the Aboriginal consultation as part of that, and we would review all the assessments that were done by the proponent and make sure and propose other mitigation strategies. And then at the end, write a huge report to the minister of the environment, just making recommendations and making sure that there are enough mitigation measures to prevent any issues with the environment, so, and the project. So did that for 2 years, and then went back and worked in the cannabis program. So at the time, the cannabis industry was very new, and they were looking for people that had a background in policy, but also in analysis or in controlled substances. And I just happened to have that combination. So I started in that program when it was just starting. So I got the opportunity to do the licensing and the inspections of new companies that were just being licensed in the Canadian commercial industry for cannabis. So I did that for a number of years over time. And then I sort of thought, I've worked in government for a good number of years, and I was becoming curious to see what other opportunities were out there. And I got headhunted by a company they're based in the US, and they did nomenclature, so pharmaceutical nomenclature of new drug products that were being created and submitted to Health Canada. And I led the Canadian team through that process. I did that for 2 years. And then that's around the time when I started thinking about, I still really loved working as an inspector and a compliance inspector. And I loved working that program. I thought it was super interesting. And then I really built a good rapport with some of the license holders. I was told that I was not really a nice inspector, but I was a fair inspector. And that's probably the best compliment that you can get. So I was fair. So I had some, of those individuals approach me and say, okay, like I want to, apply for a new site, or I need to make an amendment to my license. Like, can you help me do that? So I would kind of do that on the weekends and just, do it when I had free time. And then eventually it became a bigger thing, because that was just around the time when federal legalization happened in 2018. So the government of Canada was writing the regulations for recreational cannabis. And there's, going to obviously be a bunch of licenses that were going to, come down the pipeline. And that also included having retail stores as well, part of that. So it became busy enough that, and people wanting help with applications and just starting to think about, okay, how do I set up my business so that when the application window opens, that they'd be ready. So it became busy enough that I ended up, leaving my current job and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to do this full time and just see where it goes. And yeah, and my husband also left his job to come help me. So we have very similar backgrounds. He also worked in government in natural health products, and is also has a PhD in chemistry. And the great thing is that he also has a sales background, because he worked at a digital textbook company doing sales on the chemistry, for the chemistry textbooks. So it was a really good combination, because I'm really great at document writing and creation, and he's really great at sales. So together it worked. And so it just turned into a business, and then we incorporated, and then eventually got busy enough where we started hiring employees, and then eventually we needed an office, and the rest is history.
That's quite the backstory. So I want to take you
Yeah.
back a little bit on this. Looking looking back, even when you were a kid, you had elementary school, even high school,
Yeah.
did you see yourself really getting into the sciences? Is that something that you always wanted to do or had an attraction to?
Yeah. It was something I always wanted to do. I think it was always in my mindset. My goal was always to go to U of T to do my undergrad. I don't know. It was just something that I had in my head
Hmm.
to do. I didn't really know specifically like what the end goal was. I just knew that I liked I liked science. I liked that it explained life and I wanted to know more about it. And that's kind of like as much as I knew. I didn't really ever think, yeah, I'm going to do a PhD. Like I never really got that far
Hmm.
into thinking about it or how do I make a business out of this? Like that wasn't something that was ever in my purview.
Hmm.
Um,
But obviously the science, how does sort of like how you said it, how does interested in how does life work? Kind of thing from a
yeah,
science perspective.
yeah,
What I heard. Yeah, interesting. It's fascinating. So, if I may, what did your parents do? I mean, they came from Trinidad at a
yeah.
obviously a very young age, so that'd be obviously a big cultural
Very
shift, I'm
good.
sure.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, not really something that they necessarily wanted to do, but yeah, circumstances led them here. My father does auto body repair,
Okay.
and my mom, she had some various jobs when she was younger, seamstress. But when she ended up having us, she was primarily our mother.
He was mom.
Homemaker. She was mom.
She
So
had the most important job.
the most important, a very difficult job. Yes.
Yes, but apparently she did a great job.
Yeah, yeah, she did. She did an excellent job. So
Or
yeah, my parents didn't have a lot of formal education. Circumstances led them to that. They didn't really have the opportunity to. My mom lived in a lot of foster homes. She didn't have a stable home life,
okay.
so she didn't have the opportunity to go to school because she was always in transit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she had a lot of, street smarts, and she has a lot of ambition. It was just ambition that, couldn't really flourish. And then, yeah, and my dad didn't have a lot of education either. He basically started working at a very young age as well, as a teenager. Uh, just the way it was. And the great thing is that even though they didn't have that background, academically, they didn't really know how to apply to university or give me advice on homework or anything like that. They always gave me the support to, the other support that I needed, making sure I got enough sleep, making sure I had a stable home, making sure we had food, making sure I got up on time, got
Mm-hmm.
back to school on time, all those things. So I think that was the support that I needed. Fortunately, I was able to do a lot of that on my own.
Right.
But, you know, from like the academic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but the other support I think was definitely helpful for me.
Absolutely. Did any of your sisters or your brother go into the sciences? Where did they end up in life?
So my older sister, she's an urban planner. So she works for a pretty large company now. Yes, so she did her master's. She did her master's in urban planning.
Hmm.
And my brother went to school for GIS. He did a bachelor's in GIS. So it's basically geomatics. So it's like a lot of like the mapping of, let's say, for example, cables for bean fields, or, set up cables when you're constructing a building, you need to kind of like plan out where everything goes. So that's what he does. My other sister, she went to school for fashion. Right now she does interior designing. And then my other sister, my youngest sister, she went to school for communications, so she has a master's degree as well.
So a very highly educated family
Yeah,
from a mom
yes.
and dad who didn't have, right? Right. Think about it, right?
Yeah,
So obviously there was obviously a lot of support from your parents so that you could all, flourish and become, academic.
yeah, yeah. They definitely encouraged the academics, not in a forceful way, but in a very supportive, like, to figure out like, what you like to do and, go get it, go do it,
Right.
try, put in the effort. Yeah, they taught us a lot of hard skills and, hard work, determination, keeping your promises, sticking to your word, making sure that you give 110% all the time. So,
Yes. So that's where I was going actually, just on that note, is what do you think is the number one lesson that your dad taught you or that you learned from him?
mm, I would say that it's a good question. I think I've learned a lot of skills, but I think that what I've learned is being reliable. Um, like being reliable and dependable. Like he would always, go to work, show up on work, show up to work, not be late. His other coworkers can always count on him on like completing a job that it was, done on time. If he ever, was picking us up from school, he'd always be there.
Mm,
Yeah. So yeah, I would say being reliable.
dependable and reliable. And what's the number one lesson you learned from your mom?
Ah, it's also a lot of lessons. I would say determination. Yeah. I think she's a very determined person and has like a clear mindset on it gives her something that she wants to achieve. Like, this is the thing. Like, she doesn't waver from that.
Mm, so
So,
very, very driven
yeah.
with
Yeah.
purpose.
With purpose.
With purpose.
It's driven.
All right. Um, I had another question for you. Yeah, yeah, so I was thinking that, did you ever, oh, I know what it was. All right, it's back. I was thinking about, basically, looking at your education, looking at, you worked in government, um, working in that sector of government and having that part of your career versus now being a business owner. If you were to look back, um, which one, if you could do it over again, which route would you take?
I would still take running my own business. And that was one of the reasons why I left government, is because it's very structured. And I like structure,
Hmm.
but it's so structured that things can't move. You can't be innovative. And as a scientist, like I need to be innovative and like creative and keep, moving forward and changing,
Hmm.
and you can't really do that easily in the government because there's so much bureaucracy and levels of approval. So I was never completely satisfied, and I didn't necessarily know what that was, And I
Hmm.
knew that so sometimes you know that you know more and you could do more, but you're just like stuck in a box.
Hmm.
It was kind of that feeling.
I
And
I worked
yeah.
in government for 3.5 years. It was the most painful 3.5 years of my life.
There are many good things about it, but yeah, there it depends on, I guess, what you're looking for overall in your life and your career.
For sure, absolutely. Well, thanks for that. So next question is, what's the number one thing, the greatest thing, either positive or negative, that's happened to you that ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Yeah. The greatest thing that has happened that's ruffled my feathers really has been the past year and a half of this business, and realizing that things are not as in control as I'd like them to be. I like when things are very predictable,
Hmm.
but because of, I know that we're working in a rapidly changing regulatory landscape, and it's emerging, and that's the thing that's great about it, is because you can do so much and you can have a lot of influence. But the flip side of that is there is some unpredictability in that. And the one thing I didn't predict was that there'd be a change to the licensing process in such an extreme way
Hmm.
with the lottery. And that really made us like reimagine our business and try to think about what other services we can offer. Like how can we structure payments differently? How do we advertise ourselves differently? Like, what are some other avenues that we could leverage to become a better business? And how do we really um, like streamline everything that we're doing, right? Like really looking at our business from a different perspective, and
Hmm.
really getting into things like our finances more, because we don't necessarily come from a finance background, but it really made us like look at it at that lens a little bit more and think about how we can do this better.
Hmm.
And we wouldn't have done any of that if we hadn't gone through this. Like, we even got an interim CFO for a while, and that really like helped us frame the finances for a business and think about how we should really be like, what are some of like key indicators that we should be looking at and like things like that. So I think it's making us a better business people and making us stronger as business owners and as a company. That's definitely hard to go through.
Yo, for sure. So from what you've learned so far in the past year and a half, if there was an entrepreneur out there who was sort of struggling with the same thing, that was really affected by change that was out of their control, or or having to shift on the fly when things were growing and changing, what advice would you give?
I would really just tell them to focus on thinking about that. Look, it's important to look at it from a positive lens. I know that's really difficult, but out of that, you can be adaptable. So focus on the importance of adaptability for the business and also for yourself as a business owner, and just embrace the continuous learning process of it, right? Like think about how you can leverage other people in your network, how you can innovate your business, and it gives you opportunities to actually even potentially expand your services that you wouldn't have been forced to think about before. Right? So you could almost reimagine your business in a different way, but that only comes with you welcoming the change and being adaptable. And I think once you kind of get over the shock and like the trauma of the situation, then you can start to kind of think about, okay, like how do I improve the situation? And you have to do it as a business leader in order for your business to survive. And if you have employees, like they're looking at you too to also be the leader. So you kind of don't want to let your team down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to be said for coming at it from a mindset of gratitude, right? It's a
Yeah.
growth mindset versus a lack mindset, and how that can really, just even having that mindset, it can really shift you. Because if you can look at it as not, like, as an obstacle, can really be an opportunity if you see it as such.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's okay to not see it right away.
Hmm.
Right. And I think it's natural to not see it right away, but you really need to get to the point where you do get to the point where you see it that way. And if you are having trouble seeing it that way, then I think that it's worth finding other resources to help you get there. Right. And just recognizing that it's okay to have support from other people to help you get there. And that's also one of the things that we wouldn't have done otherwise if we weren't in this situation. With having some of the challenges that we had in the last year, by bringing in, others in our network and our, tech, and to give us advice.
Mm.
And it's not always easy to ask for advice. And it's something I really wouldn't ask for. And sometimes you only ask in extreme situations.
Yeah, isn't that true?
Yes.
And I have to say that's the one thing, as you're a member of tech, I'm a member of tech as well as a speaker, but being a member, one of the things that I really appreciated or have appreciated is when you're doing issue processing, because we're all up against issues, right? Because I mean, we're in business. If it's easy, there's something wrong. So, but even, when you're looking at doing issue processing and have either, are we asking the right question? Number one. Number two is, isn't it really reassuring though to have that peer advisory group of seeing, number one, other people have gone through what you've gone through, but other people can also give you a lens that you'll never ever thought of, or you've never really seen through, and it gives you a whole different perspective. And I think having that support system around you, just like your parents supported you, to go to school, is incredibly important. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Sometimes you really need a sanity check.
Mm. Yeah.
And the decisions that you have to make in these situations are not trivial. Like
Mhm.
they're like life-changing, business-changing decisions. And for you to have to make those on your own is really difficult. And that's where a lot of the stress comes from. So having other people to tell you, okay, like, yes, like this is the right decision for you because of XYZ.
Mhm.
And then you kind of look at it in that sense that, I didn't really think about that. Or yeah, you're saying that because you've been through it and and like the numbers don't lie, or you've had other people look at your business too and make an assessment. And I think that's really important too, to have that type of support in your overall decision making, because again, it's not easy to make those decisions. So having that confidence as you make the decision helps helps with the stress, helps you get through to focus on what the next step is, and then just keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know as well as I do, you don't grow in your comfort zone.
No.
Never, 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 never. All right. So, because I've been a speaker to your groups with Lindsay, you also know that geese fly with 71% more efficiency flying in a V formation than flying alone or flying solo. What are your thoughts? What do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in a V formation?
Yeah. I think the secret to getting a team to fly in the V formation is really around fostering a culture of collaboration, having clear communication and a shared vision. So everyone knows what their job is, right? They know
Mhm.
how everyone else is working together as a team. Everyone has the shared purpose as they're flying. So that helps you, get there easier and faster. So that kind of comes with creating that environment where every team member understands their role and understands how they contribute to the collective goal, right? So that could be in many different ways in an organization, whether you're training, having specific training or idea sharing. But with the leadership, we're setting clear key strategies and in transparency, like through our process and through our communication, so that everyone knows exactly what we're doing, knows where the business is going, and everyone is flying in the same direction.
How hard do you think it is to get a really, I mean, a really real, crystal clear vision and trying to communicate that out to a team?
Oh, that's hard sometimes because everyone communicates in a different way. Everyone receives information in a different way.
Mhm.
And recognizing the way in which people do that is important, because if you're transmitting a message one way because that's what works for you, doesn't mean that it works for everyone. So being aware on how you frame it, and you might actually have to communicate it a few times in a few different ways, right? And I think that's actually critical in the communication strategy, right? So yeah, really knowing your team. So
Mhm.
there are many ways to assess that, and I think you know we've gone through that and together some of our tech meetings, and just how people operate, but certain things resonate with them based on their not their skills, but cognitive
Cognitive, there you go.
their cognitive ability.
Yeah.
So
So if you look at even in your company, so you have, your husband's your business partner, so your partners
yeah,
in life and in business. Um, I think you made a comment to me one time when I was there, but it was, if you look at how you communicate to the team, and your background and how your husband communicates to the team and his background, is there a big difference there as far from a communication
yeah,
standpoint?
yeah, and it's very obvious in our teams. So
Mm,
we have an operations team, we have a marketing team, and a sales team.
yeah.
The operations team, we're fact finders, so we would love all the little details, and yes, sometimes it's too much, but we need it because we're the ones who are writing the applications. We assess risk all the time, try to be risk adverse, make sure things are compliant. So we're always we need more information. The more information, the better. And then we can make a determination. So usually when I give information or communicate to a team, it's, I try to give everyone as much information as they can so that they can take that information, be informed, and then make informed decisions out of that. Lucas is more of a quick start. So he is like, I got you. You said that one word, I got it. Like my brain has sparked alive, and there's all these fireworks going off and what needs to be done. And he has this clear vision on what all the steps are. So he communicates that way. It's like, I just need this one thing. And it's like, okay. Or sometimes he'll send an email and it's like, okay, is there an action for me? Or is this no, it's very different. So as a business, that works well in the sense that some people resonate with the way Lucas communicates, and then
Mhm.
others resonate with the way I communicate. So we kind of have those two channels, and they know that, if they need more information, they go to me. If they need less and just need to implement, then they go to Lucas. So yes, it's kind of to see how that ability that we have
Mhm.
also translates to our careers and like our roles and what we're good at. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. There's two pieces with that. Number one, I say that really is the V formation because as you start swapping out who needs what, you have those the differences. So you span more ground, which is basically when you're swapping out. That is the V formation. The other piece that's interesting about this is that you're both in sciences, you're both PhDs, you're both very intelligent, but how you approach it is completely different.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So it's like if I had to do what he was doing, I would have so much anxiety. If
Right.
someone just gave me like one word and it's like, okay, you got to go and sell this thing, I'd be like, oh no. So yeah,
But if he was doing what you were doing, it'd probably be the same thing.
yeah, yeah. He wouldn't enjoy
Right.
it. It's taking too long. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's like let's go, let's go, let's
uh,
go, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So that's fascinating. So that's interesting. It's, that you can play off each other, which I think would make you, very successful in business and in life because again, I'm sure those differences can be frustrating at times, but when you
yeah,
lean into it, it can be really powerful as well,
yes,
right?
that's
Swing the pendulum.
yeah.
Yeah. So what are you doing in yourself or CannDelta? What are you doing to better the pond? What ripples are you creating out there in the world?
Mhm. We're, as a company, really committed to advancing the cannabis industry, its standards, and we really just do that through our consultancy and creating a service that is really from start to finish so that our clients all feel very supported in their business endeavors. And at the end of the day, we need to have a successful industry, obviously for our company to be successful, but also for the industry to be successful. And so much goes into starting a business, and we know exactly what it's like. We know how our clients feel to be starting a new business
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is to have the support to really carry you through. So we really try to be, a full suite service for our clients so that we can help move the industry forward. As part of that, we do work closely with the regulators. I think it's really important that in the position that we're in, that we do have a voice to support those in the industry and also provide feedback to the regulators on what's working, what's not working, and we're sort of the middle person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it's easier for the regulator to communicate with us because we're kind of like the third party. They could get information from us, but we're not really a license holder. So they get a good idea of what are the pain points and what are some of the challenges that are being faced in the industry. So we try to advocate where we can, provide feedback on consultations as much as we can, and really be a source of education for those in the industry. We do spend a lot of effort in producing YouTube videos, blogs,
Oh,
short videos. We're on all social media platforms and try to be a source of content so that we can also educate those in the industry as well, so they know what's going on in their state, what's going on in other places around the world. What are some challenges? What are some solutions? So we're really trying to be a hub of knowledge. Um, Personally, I've also taught in a few institutions on cannabis regulations and cannabis law. Um, and I've also been a mentor to some individuals as well and tried to be involved in mentorship programs for women who are looking to become entrepreneurs or to get into the cannabis industry as well. So I try as much as I can on a personal level, but also as a business to give back to the community.
love it. I have a couple of questions for you on that.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound like a silly question, but I just want to get your thoughts on it. How important do you feel it is in the cannabis industry to have proper legislation out there?
I think so. The legislation is important, um, but it's also all the policy around it. and how it's being implemented by the regulators. And that's more of the gray area sometimes, because like the legislation says this, and it's like, I know it says this, but there's other policy pieces that are made by those in government that sometimes is less predictable. And there's things that are like, you ask them a question about something and then you just don't get an answer, or it goes into a black box. It's more of the transparency and the frequency of communication that is making the process very difficult for the applicants and license holders. And this is not unique to any one jurisdiction. It's really all of them. They're just like not responsive. There's so much bureaucracy that goes into a response that they just can't respond. And sometimes you're like, this is a pretty easy thing for you to respond, but it's just silent. And people are trying to run their business at the same time. And sometimes they can't move forward because they need this answer. Right. So
things move at the speed of Ottawa.
Yeah. And people are paying leases. There's just so many other financial aspects that clients sometimes suffer for because they can't get a response. Right? So that, I think that's more the challenge than say like the legislation piece.
And how important do you feel it is to have legalized cannabis?
I think it's more of an accessibility issue. So medical cannabis is great, but that means that you need to have some medical condition, that it has some physician oversight, that they've deemed that you have a medical condition. But there are many other, I wouldn't really call them a condition, but instances where people can benefit from cannabis that's aside just from like, yes, it's adult use, from like the idea of like fun, like there are many people who consume cannabis because it reduces their anxiety, or because they may have a pain that's very mild and it's not really like going to be seen as something that needs to be medically dosed, but they have some condition where they would like to consume cannabis. And so I think from the accessibility perspective, that is useful. I think there should still be regulations around it. I don't think it should be like a free-for-all where you just go into any store and just purchase it. I think there needs to be some controls over it, because there is some risk profile associated with cannabis, even though it's much lower than some other substances. But it still does exist, and depending on someone's background, if they have any other conditions, it may compromise that. You still need to protect it from youth. I still think that there are some other key components or aspects that are very important that still need some control over it. But I definitely think that, as we've seen, many jurisdictions have cannabis for some time now. In Canada, there's been no substantial evidence to suggest that it causes, increase in crime, or increase in intoxicated driving, or increase in use by youth. You're not really seeing that. You're seeing more people vaping, like more kids vaping, but not necessarily, trying to consume cannabis.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
So there hasn't been the evidence to support or to show that you should prevent adult use cannabis, but I think it should still be controlled in some manner.
Sure. And what are your thoughts?
The illicit market, which is a very important point.
So what was that?
The illicit market still exists. There's still an illicit market of of cannabis that still needs to be overcome. So if there is some way of having regulated adult use cannabis, and that should deter people from consuming illicit cannabis. Of course, there's the enforcement aspect of law enforcement coming to shut down those illicit operations, but that's aside from that.
Right. And what are your thoughts on other drugs getting legalized? So any, whether it is going to be, any harder drugs like cocaine, heroin, any of the sort of harder drugs. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't foresee that happening. There has been some conversation some time ago about small amounts of like psilocybin mushrooms. But I don't foresee that happening. It does have a different risk profile than cannabis. So it's still seen by government as not having the evidence to support a recreational framework in any sense. There's been decriminalization in many parts. I mean, BC has decriminalized certain possession limits.
Hmm.
But from a recreational perspective, I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon,
Yeah.
if ever.
Yeah, even the decriminalization, I think I mean, that's a whole other topic, but I think it's really fascinating how things sort of emerged. They're trying to, shift in that direction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's just because there's, overuse, there's addiction issues in
Yeah.
certain areas like BC. So that's kind of, the compromise in a way.
Yeah,
It's,
if you ever,
trying to do that. Yeah,
one drive down East Hastings in Vancouver and you'll,
yeah, it's unfortunate, yeah, how
yeah,
that area has become for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
the support.
Yeah. All right. So one last question is, what's one lesson that you've learned along your path being an entrepreneur that you'd want to share with an entrepreneur starting a business today, Sherry?
Hmm. Um, I I would just say honestly, like you need to be able to ride the wave. You need to go with the ups and downs. There's going to be like very good times, and there's going to be times that are not so great. But hopefully the good times will outweigh the difficult times. So you kind of got to stick through all those different times, right, and get out to the end. So I was talking about being adaptable. I think that's one quality that you really, really need as an entrepreneur is to be adaptable. And with that comes all the other, tangential skills like being innovative and, creative and all those as you go along and build out different parts of your business as like that, as you become more adaptable. But it's really, yeah, being adaptable and recognizing that there's going to be good times and there's going to be challenging times as well. That's all part of running a business.
What's the one thing you love about being an entrepreneur?
I love that I get to make decisions that have weight to it and without having to go through many levels of approval.
Mm.
I think that's what I enjoy. I love, yeah, I love working in the office. I love, having a team. I love helping people. I think that's the most satisfying is just doing good work and, helping people at the end of the day. I actually like love doing the work as much as I like love running a business, yes, but I actually love talking to the clients and love helping them. Yeah, they say that's, yeah, probably the
And here's a
best.
question I've never asked. What advice would you give a female entrepreneur starting a business today?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. Uh, I would say that it could definitely be challenging, especially if you're going to be looking for funding,
Hmm.
because women have a harder time, having those funding conversations for having support by investors and having them believe in their business. So having the right team around you is important, the right support around you is important to get you there, and recognizing that now's a great time to be a female entrepreneur. There's so many different support systems I think that are out there now, and mentorship programs and dedicated funds targeted towards female entrepreneurs. So I think if you are going to do it now and don't second guess your skills.
Ah, best you
Yeah.
got.
Women have a tendency to do that, to make sure everything's like perfectly aligned
Uh,
in place before they just go and do it. But you really just gotta like try it.
right. Yeah, you got to get in. I mean, is it really ever perfect?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's never really perfect.
It's never really perfect.
No. And there is a real element of like building the ship or building the plane while you're flying, whatever that analogy is. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely a bit of that. You just gotta do it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to get it out, get it out the door. What I call the shitty first draft, right?
Yeah.
Is just do it. It's never going to be great. It's never going to be perfect. But once
Yeah.
we get it out the door and start.
Yeah. And it's probably more perfect than you think it is.
You're right. Yeah. I think probably we probably make it worse than really really is.
Yeah,
You know.
that's right.
So, all right,
Our own
here's one last question for you, Sherry. Is if you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
what would I say? I would say that where you are right now is where you're meant to be.
Hmm. Want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that's hard to see it in the moment. But I would say that many times in my career, like I'm always thinking like, why am I doing this? Or I should be doing this other thing, or, but then when I look back, it kind of makes sense, right? It's like, if I didn't go to UT, then I wouldn't have gotten that job at the government because at the time they're only hiring the government. They're only hiring graduates from UT.
Hmm.
And then if I didn't go to grad school, then that's where actually I met my husband, who's my business partner. But I've learned a certain core set of skills there that have also been transferable to what I'm doing now. And then I worked in policy for a while, and that was useful. It's like every kind of step doesn't really make sense always at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you look back, you're like, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have gotten that skill set, or I wouldn't have met that person, or I wouldn't have this mindset. And it's hard to see it like in the moment, but like you kind of are supposed to be where you are, and you don't really know where it's going to take you next, but this is like the moment.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's letting life find you instead of you finding it.
Yeah, that's right. Just
Yeah,
trust that you're going to get to what the next step is.
right. I love it. It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sherry, I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your stories, and I want to thank you for all the hard work you're doing in the cannabis industry, because I do believe it is actually it's really important, and having people like you there to be able to, number one, you're supporting businesses, you're supporting people, and you're providing a really highly valuable service to, well, I mean, North America. This isn't just Canada. So thank you for everything that you do. And if people want to find you or talk to you, where do they go, Sherry?
Yeah. You can go to our website. It's canndelta.com. We have a lot of information on all of our pages. There's a contact form there. You can contact us there. We're also on all social media channels at CannDelta. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I'm forgetting any? LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter.
Facebook
On Facebook. We're on Facebook also. So you can find us there as well.
and YouTube.
Also check out our YouTube channel. It's CannDelta Inc. You could find us there. We have a lot of different blogs. We also do run a podcast as well. So you can check out what we have there. I mean, try to put as much information as we can on new applications as well. So whatever, information source, you find a lot of information there. And we're always happy to help.
We'll make sure that we get all that I'll get that from you and put it in the show notes so that people can go there to, try to track you down on all the various platforms.
Yeah, thank you.
Love it. So there you had it, folks. We had a great time with Sherry Boodram of CannDelta. And this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.